Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle Bookshop today. Those of you who are new to the channel, or I think 100 of you who are new to the channel, I live in Boston, and there's a used bookstore in Boston, one of the oldest used bookstores in the country, called the Brattle Bookshop. And I have been a customer there for a very long time. A very, very long time. And they are terrific. The first two floors are general interest used books, all priced reasonably on every subject under the sun, crammed into every available inch. Except for the main entrance when you walk in the front door is a big table. That is the buying and pricing table. That table is always active with new stuff, always, before it gets scattered all over the shop. And then the third floor of the Brattle is antique and collectible books, the kind of books that I don't care about. First editions, very rare first editions. The pricing is much higher. $25, $30 will start you off, and you can go from there to some of the shop's most valuable possessions, depending on whether or not you're into that sort of thing or you have a gift to give to someone who is. I've almost never been on the third floor of the Brattle, but I haunt the rest of the place, at least when the weather's fine. I used to go all the time. I used to go to the Brattle every day. I used to work right up the street from them. And even when I didn't, I still used to go every day. And I find that at the age of 28, it's freezing cold today. It's bright sunny, but it's freezing cold. And I find that the idea of wandering around the Brattle when it's freezing cold is just doesn't appeal. Especially since, in addition to that used bookstore that I just described, the main attraction of the Brattle, for me anyway, is a sale lot next door. They own the lot next to the building, where another building would ordinarily be. And instead, it's an open sale lot full of books. $1, $3, and $5 books on no organization, no arrangement, hardcovers, paperbacks, new, old, and it's incredible. The Brattle sale lot is incredible. You really have to experience it. If you have been to, for instance, the outdoor carts, the sale carts at the Strand bookstore in New York City, or maybe your local used bookstore has a cart outside or something like that, that will not prepare you for the experience of going to the Brattle carts, because the Brattle carts are a whole separate bookstore that's dirt cheap, and where, if you're careful, a modicum of care, like, for instance, all the care in the world won't help you a lot of times with the Strand, because their outdoor carts are where they put a lot of their junk, stuff that they don't really want. Whereas the Brattle, it's easily possible in the outdoor sale carts to get yourself a full armload of brand new looking books. They're not worn, they're not waterlogged, they're not anything like that, and on any kind of subject. You can find the basics of any kind of a starter library out there on almost any day. And when it's spring, I'm promised that spring will come into Boston, that it comes every year. When it's a beautiful spring day, there's just nothing better than going there. I went there anyway today, even though I knew it was going to be mighty cold out in the sale lot. And I talked to the staff. I love them, and I met some old cronies, that the regular customers like myself. We talked as well. And my trip to the Brattle today had a slight difference from what it usually does. Usually, as I've said about the Brattle, the wrong thing to do when you go to the Brattle, especially if you're going to the sale lots, the way I'd always do, is to try to pressure karma. That's the wrong thing to do. It will not work. You cannot say, I'm looking for a copy of Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, so I'm going to go to the Brattle sale lot. Not only will you not find a copy of the Red Dragon when you go there, but you'll never find one there. You will curse the karma of the lot. And ordinarily, I adhere to that. Ordinarily, I let the lot move me. I let it show me what it has, instead of going there with a mental laundry list. That's a bad idea. Good idea for another used bookstore, maybe, but not for the sale lot of the Brattle. But today, I kind of sort of broke that rule. Not explicitly. I was still perfectly happy to take whatever it showed me, as I'll show you. I have some books to show you. But I went today wondering how many of BookTube's March reading events I could cover in a trip to the Brattle sale lot. Specifically 3. There's the Rereadathon. Alex Black has reinstituted the BookTube Rereadathon. We're rereading a book every month. And the prompt for this month is to reread a book where it's only your second time, where the reread that you're doing this month is only the second time that you've read it. The last time was the first time. So the BookTube Rereadathon, but there's also March of the Mammoths. And I wondered, would I be able to find a book out there on the sale lot that fit the bill? That's 800 pages. And I'm now mentally with March of the Mammoths, I am now segregating it to around 800 pages instead of anything higher than 800 pages, because I'm kind of hoping that we can create a BookTube event for books 1,000 pages and more. That's kind of a hope of mine. So I'm actually wanting the book to be right around 800 pages. And the third thing that I was wondering about was March Mystery Madness, which is a great big BookTube event that's happening over a dozen channels. I'm sure you've seen it in your video feed, where we celebrate murder mysteries in all their infinite variety throughout the month of March. And I myself want to do a video on it every day, but I didn't make any videos yesterday on this channel. Yesterday I did something I almost never do. I misbudgeted time, and suddenly looked at the time and realized that I had to do severe triage in order to get anything like the stuff I needed to get done. That almost never happens. Usually I keep a very clear weather eye on my available time. But one of the things that had to go was videos. Unfortunately, almost everything else had to go as well. But I was curious to know if I could find a March Mystery Madness, if I could find a murder mystery out at the Brattle lot that I might be in the mood to read or reread. Either a first-time experience. One of the nice things about the Brattle sale lot is that everything is so cheap that you can take a chance, which you absolutely cannot do in a retail bookstore anymore. A new hardcover in a retail bookstore is $30. $30 for something you might not like. It's no surprise to me, given the massive increase in book sale, in book prices, new book prices, that there's pure piracy on the part of publishers. It's no surprise to me that library usage has skyrocketed in the last few years when it was predicted to die. It's no surprise to me that that's the case. You go to the library, you can get an armload of stuff for nothing at all, except the trouble of bringing it back. So ordinarily I don't try to bully the karma of the Brattle sale lots, but today I did, and I found something from all three of those things. I wasn't expecting to. I was expecting to find a whole bunch of stuff that I had no idea about. Instead, I found 5 books. And I want to show them to you, starting with a work of history. We may have seen it on this channel before, but if we did, it was in a crappy trade paperback. I have had this book in mass market paperback and crappy trade paperback many, many times. And one of the things that should tell you is that it's really good. It is really, really good. It's the reason I kept getting it over and over again. But today I found it in a perfectly good hardcover with a dust jacket. And it's this. It's G.P. Criggs Jacobean Pageant in a hardcover that looks like the day it was born. And this is his sort of sweeping personality portrait of the reign of King James I, which he correctly points out is often overlooked as a sort of a weird, distempered pause between the Elizabethan age and the Stuarts, and the enormous drama there of a king fighting his own parliament and losing his life, and then an interregnum, and then a second Stuart and a restoration. That all of that, the two bookends of King James's rule are so dramatic that often he gets lost in the shuffle. And this book was very popular when it came out, specifically for that reason. Oh, this came out in the 1950s, I think. 1962. This came out in 1962, and a lot of people, historically literate people at the time, thought the same thing. As soon as they saw it, they thought, oh, well, I can tell you a lot about Elizabeth. I can tell you a lot about King Charles I as well, but what about King James? And it's a fascinating era. And it is also, Craig also advanced, he moved the ball a little by giving a more favorable portrait of King James. The more you read about King James in the primary sources, the more you read about those primary sources, the more you realize how much history has sort of swallowed the character assassination that was done upon him. I'm sure that if you know anything about him, you know about this bumbling idiot, this lustful moron with a red face and a tongue too big for his mouth. That line's been repeated in serious biographies. And I've read a couple of books that had no patience for that and reevaluated James on the basis not so much of propaganda, but as close as we could come to neutral sources. And Crick broke that ground. He was one of the first major historians to do that. And so the James in this book is not some bumbling idiot surrounded by courtiers on the make. Although we get a lot of great courtiers on the make here. We got all the stories of James's role, the gunpowder plot, and death of Francis Bacon, and the Walter Raleigh. In fact, a lot of critics, when they were talking about this book when it first came out, sort of mentioned that it's a Jacobean pageant, yes, but it's also a portrait of one age killing another. The Jacobean age killed off as much of the Elizabethan age as it possibly could, and a lot of times explicitly by killing the people. So it's just a fascinating read from start to finish. And I didn't have a copy. The minute I saw it, I realized that I'd either read my last copy until it blew up into splinters, or I'd gotten tired of what it looked like and just got rid of it, throw it away, or if it's not readable anymore, or sell it to the Brattle. So I grabbed this. I will reinforce it a little, and then I will have it. The number one popular account of James's reign. So great. And this next one is a biography, but it's an unconventional biography. I remember it coming out, and I don't think I ever got around to it. It's by Hugh Aldersley Williams, and it's The Adventures of Sir Thomas Browne in the 21st century. And this is from 2015. Thomas Browne, of course, is the author of Religio Medici. He's also the author of Pseudodoxia Epidemica. You could translate it to an epidemic of fake news. He wrote an enormous work debunking a whole bunch of popular myths and folklores, popular knowledge. It's tremendous fun to read. It has no current English language translation, and it has no good translation in English at all that I'm aware of. But it's terrific. So is Religio Medici, but that at least has had better translations. But he was a weird character, a debunker, a skeptic, long before we really use that word for what it means today, an intellectual, best-selling author, doctor. And this book is a very unconventional biography. The author of the book decides, rather than give us a straightforward chronological, date by date by date from birth to death biography of Thomas Browne, it would instead trace him through his ideas, through big umbrella terms for his ideas, how they were in his day, how they were in subsequent days, how he has fared all the way to the present day, hence the title. The big ideas like animals, plants, science, tolerance, faith, melancholy, stuff like that. And it's an unconventional approach. Ordinarily, I have a very low patience for unconventional approaches in biographies, as in so much of the basic work has yet to be done that I always hesitate. Like, for instance, where is the big 800-page biography of Sir Thomas Browne? Anywhere in the last 30 years. Where is that? We got this. And ordinarily, the fact that we don't have that would make me impatient of this, but it's so charmingly done that I didn't mind it at all. I'm trying to remember now if I ever actually did write about this thing. I don't. When I say I never got to it, I never got around to writing about it. I don't think, but I'm a little bit hazy on that with a couple of books in this Brattle Hall. So I'll have to check and see. And it's also a little bit difficult. I've been writing about books for a long time, and before that, a long time before that, I wrote about books for a long time, and I wrote in a lot of places, some of which are more dutiful than others, putting their content online or being searchable online. So it ends up being almost impossible to find everything that I've written. But I don't think I ever reviewed this. But I'm a fan of Thomas Browne, of course. I think his name's come up recently on this channel because I got a copy of an instance of the Finger Post. But he's fascinating to read about in his own right. So I was happy to find the book. And of course, like with this is in perfect condition. This is from the Brattle sale lot. I think this was $3, but it's new as the day it was printed. So, and this next one fits the bill for one of the readathons for BookTube. This is March Mystery Madness. This is an Inspector Lindley novel, In Pursuit of the Proper Sinner by Elizabeth George, who writes fantastic, incredibly atmospheric British detective series starring a detective named Lindley, who's an aristocrat. He's an earl, and he works for Scotland Yard, and so does his working class colleague, whose name is Barbara Havers. Is that right? Is it Barbara Havers? Yes, Barbara Havers. Okay. And this was from, oh God, the 1990s. This book is from 20 years ago at least. 1999. Yeah, 20 years ago. And it's halfway through. She already had a bunch of Inspector Lynley books under her belt. And this one, she's a lot like P.D. James, although she's not English. She was born in the American Midwest. So you'd never know it. If you didn't know that about her, you would not assume that. But she's a lot like P.D. James in that these are very atmospheric, very, very plenteous in detail. They're not lean. They're not leanly written at all. They're well, a lot of reviewers said, and I don't think they meant the insult. I'm not sure they were aware of the insult, but a lot of them said it read like a novel. Of course, a mystery novel is a novel, or at least it should be. I admit a lot of them are so sketchily done. They're adhering so closely to the skeleton of the genre that they don't care whether or not they're providing any literary quality. But Elizabeth George hasn't done that. And I remember In Pursuit of the Proper Sinner is one of the first of her books that really starts to embrace that literary side. They get longer after this, and they get a lot more thoughtful and literary than some of the earlier ones. I love a lot of the earlier ones, but it's hard for me to quite to describe it, but they get a lot more rich, a lot more textured. We learn a lot about everybody, even characters who are never going to reappear, just so that we can get a feel for their world. And we get a lot of the world of Lynley and his job and his background and his personality, and he's sometimes very maddening as a main character. And this book, if I remember correctly, I haven't read it since 1999, but if I remember correctly, this is just fantastic. A big, sprawling web of things going wrong. A person, one of the most affecting portraits that I remember, a young person who's trying to save the name and the fortunes of his family against all kinds of trouble brought on by himself and also brought on by the world outside. And he comes to a terrible end. This book is full of terrible ends. It's full of terrible things happening that are not put right because that's not how the world works. I really like that about it. And this also has a lot to do with the theatrical world, and it's done really well. Theatrical world always sort of goes hand in hand with murder mysteries. No murder mystery writer can withstand the allure of it for very long. And there's also a murder is conducted at a henge, because the Stonehenge is not the only massive, foreboding Neolithic stone sculpture in England. The island's littered with them. And there's a dead body that's found in a henge. And it's done wonderfully. But I can't wait to read it again. I don't think I have any Elizabeth George here at the moment in the house. And I could stand anything. I probably wouldn't want to reread any of her books written before this one, but all the ones after it. Yes, absolutely. So I'll start with this one. And that takes care of March Mystery Madness. But then this next one also takes care of March of the Mammoths. This is by David Hackett Fisher, who you might remember from Paul Revere's Ride and Washington's Crossing. He did two books that were really well received on the American Revolutionary period. He decided for this book to do something different, do something a little bit bigger. This is a biography of Samuel Champlain. This is Champlains Dream. And it's all about this incredibly remarkable man who was born on the coast of France and was, among many other things, a terrific explorer and navigator across the Atlantic dozens of times without losing a ship, without losing a man, at least to navigational error, not a single person, and explored a huge amount of North America, had an indefatigable adventurous spirit and an ironclad constitution. And this is a huge book. This is, in fact, I checked when I was at the Brattle. Yeah, this is 820 pages. So this is a mammoth. This fits squarely in the 800-page range. As soon as I saw it, I realized that I didn't have a copy. And that was easy to remember. The hard thing to remember is where I reviewed this. I know I reviewed this book. This is from, when was this? This was from 2008. I know that I reviewed this thing. I know that I did. I just cannot for the life of me remember where. Or find it. I Googled myself and this book's title, and I got nothing. I'll have to keep trying until I find it, because I know that I did. Somewhere, I know that I did. It could be that I reviewed it for a journal that's gone out of print, or that stopped publication, maybe taken its website down, something like that. Headaches like that are always annoying. There's not much you can do when you are an omnipresent hack who's everywhere. But nevertheless, I'm not sure. I seem to remember that the review I wrote was small, was short. I think it was 300 or 500 words, so it wouldn't have been anything to write home about anyway. But I still, it's pretty ironic when I'm out here half the time bringing up older authors and complaining that all of their body of book reviews have gone missing and no one can even collect them, and they'd all be interesting to read. If I can't collect my own, I will try again. I will try and look for it again. But I remember, this is terrific. It's the best thing that David Hackett Fischer has ever written. And it's a straightforward biography of Samuel Champlain. So it's his life, his times, and an incredible life it is, too. And it stands alone for Champlain biographies, especially in English. There's no competition anywhere near it. So I was glad to see it. And the last one is the rereadathon. Because believe it or not, I have only read this book once. I read it when it first came out, and I have not returned to it since then. And this first came out, this is going to be painful, 1994. This first came out in 1994. This is Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan, the late Carl Sagan. And I read it when it first came out, and I loved it. It's all about exploring the stars. It's all about seeing what's out there, going elsewhere. There is our author. Wow. And it's a time capsule, because a lot of the stuff that Sagan was envisioning in 1994 has since happened. There have been some major planetary probes that have gone out since then that make a lot of this into a historical curiosity. But the reason I got it is because first of all, I want to have all of Carl Sagan's book, and I believe this is the last one. I don't think I need any others. But the thing that saves it, the thing that I'll probably be concentrating on in my rereading, although in rereading it I will come face to face with all of the stuff that has since come true. When Sagan writes in this book, it'll be up to future probes of the planet Mars, that background. It'll be up to future probes of the planet Mars to tell us more details about it. Well, those probes have happened. They've sent back enormous amounts of absolutely incredible information. And think about, when this book came out, no exoplanets had been discovered. It wasn't the equipment for it. No one had discovered any exoplanets. No one knew for sure that nearby stars had planets revolving around them in the so-called Goldilocks zone. In other words, not too close so that it's too hot for liquid water, but not too far away so that it's too hot for liquid water either. So it's too cold. It has to be a planet has to be in the right zone to have liquid water. And as far as we know, you need liquid water for life. And we now know that there are hundreds of such planets. Even of the meager, tiny fraction that we can detect, there are hundreds. And Sagan didn't know that. He didn't live long enough to know that. So there's going to be a lot in this book that's going to be a little bittersweet. But the reason that I got it wasn't for that. The reason I got it is because this is also his most winning big picture book. Even more than Cosmos. And I love it for that. And it also has an immortal piece of prose. A piece of prose that you may have already heard in excerpt. And I'm going to read it to you anyway, because you're a captive audience, and because I'll never get another chance like that. I'll never find this book again. At the very beginning of his book, he sounds a clarion, a trumpet call, for why we should care about the pale blue dot. Why we should care about it at all. It's remarkable. It was pointed out to him when this book first appeared that most authors save this kind of trumpeting for the last chapter. They didn't do it in the first chapter. And his response was, well, I guess I'm just impatient. But I want to read it to you. I want to read you just a bit, and then we'll close up, because this is the last book. Because he's talking about the fact that astronomical science had, by his point, reached the ability, probes had gone far enough away and turned backwards, sometimes at his insistence, in order to take a picture of Earth from an incalculable distance away, so that it looks like a speck of dust in a sunbeam. That's just what it looks like. And he points that out here. Look again at that dot, the dot captured in that sunbeam. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, Everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a very vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that, in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another, and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. That's amazing. And a call to action. It's also a call to astronomy. I wonder how many astronomers were made by this book. But I've only read it once, so I will reread it. I will reread it for the rereadathon. So there you go. We have that was a Brattle trip that I went to with a theme. I ordinarily don't do themes at the Brattle, but with a pale blue dot. Carl Sagan. Pretty sure this is the last Sagan book I need. You've seen me get a lot of them on this channel. Then In Pursuit of the Proper Sinner by Elizabeth George. Maybe the beginning of just finding a bunch of the later Elizabeth Georges and just including them all in my library. I know I go back to them, so it might be time to just admit that I should own them. Then Champlains Dream by David Hackett Fisher. Big book, a mammoth book, but a terrific read, and a life that Americans especially should know a lot better than they do. Then The Adventures of Sir Thomas Browne in the 21st Century, where we see how his forward-looking knowledge and skepticism holds up in the present day. And lastly, Jacobean Pageant, a classic of a book. I'm sure you've seen it at used bookstores and library sales and whatnot, and well worth it. A classic that's well worth your time to read, unlike a lot of the things that you see at library sales and book sales. It's actually really, really well done. And it will introduce you to a world like Champlain. It will introduce you to a world that not enough people, even people who love reading history, know enough about the Jacobean era. I know a lot of English majors. I have known, not presently. Presently, all the English majors that I know are only concerned about themselves. That's the only thing they ever read about, or talk about, or think about. But once upon a time, I knew a lot of English majors who knew the Jacobean period only through its literature. They knew almost nothing about it, its history. So I was happy to find this. That and Pale Blue Dot will go right in this room. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. That was a Brattle day that I had. It was a wonderful time. It was just brutally cold. The weather here is going to get brutally cold. It's going to be freezing cold for the next couple of days, and then it's supposed to warm up a little. Piles of snow will melt, and maybe we will go towards having a spring. That would be nice. Spring would be nice. I will, of course, complain to you either way. So I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.